Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose. And the contrast of Xbox and PlayStation has always been a bit of a hot topic. And one of the hottest and most controversial topics of the past, really close to a decade by this point, is the different direction for their subscription services. Xbox has majorly invested into their day one catalog, but meanwhile, PlayStation, they kind of scoff at that strategy. And they did that once again today. The only question is, are they wrong? Well, let's talk about that. First, though, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you just so much for what you do, and you will receive this video through early access. Let's go get right into things, though, starting off with some Nintendo news. They just revealed the release date and the price for Drag X Drive, which, as of right now, will be their next exclusive planned following the release of Donkey Kong Bonanza. It'll launch on August 14th for $20. So this will be a budget title for them, and I mean, probably a good thing, because if I'm being completely honest here, I think you can make a very real argument that this could have been a pack-in title for the Switch 2. I mean, if you look at what PlayStation did with Astro's Playroom, that's exactly what they could have done for Drag X Drive. It's a fun idea that highlights new technology using their controller, in this case, the Switch 2's mouse-like feature. And I'd say it looks fun for what it is. You could probably play this for a couple hours and have a good time, don't get me wrong. But let's be completely honest here, it's unlikely that this is going to fly off shelves. So in my opinion, it's actually crazy to me that Nintendo made two games that could have easily been a pack-in game for the Switch 2 to bolster its value, yet here we are, and yeah, you can just hear the enthusiasm from fans. Let me tell you. Now, here's a fun story. One of this generation's most surprising and enjoyable games has been Vampire Survivors. I mean, it doesn't look like much. It's not a graphically demanding game. It looks simple on the surface, but it's actually a fantastic game. I really can't recommend it enough if you haven't already played it, but apparently, as you can see on screen, there's a fan-made Halo project in development that takes that same idea and drops it into the Halo universe. This is Spartan Survivors, yeah, very similar name here, but the real cool thing is that Microsoft just officially gave them their blessing. So that means that it'll actually make it to market and it'll release for both Xbox and PC sometime in 2025. So technically, we will get a brand new Halo game later this year, and like I said, this is really just a cool thing to see. We're just so used to seeing companies like Nintendo shut down fan-made projects left and right, but here we have Xbox, and apparently they're for the people, or I mean, at least in this situation. We'll ignore other instances for today. Okay, so Square Enix, they've made some decisions that haven't always lined up with what their fans actually want. Look no further than Final Fantasy 16, and hey, I'm a defender of that game. I really enjoyed it for what it was, but at the end of the day, Final Fantasy rose to popularity back in the 90s when it was rocking the world with its turn-based combat. And that's something that they've drifted away from in their recent titles. Final Fantasy 16, you can make a very real argument, feels more like a Devil May Cry game than it does a traditional Final Fantasy title. And a part of that shift comes from this idea that turn-based games just don't sell well enough in the modern era. Now, I could point to various turn-based games that tears that argument down, but that's what makes this topic just so interesting. Their investors are starting to take notice. Check this out. This was posted up by Genki, and he said, Square Enix reportedly say that they are aware of Expedition 33 and that they value turn-based RPGs. At the Square Enix shareholders meeting, one investor said that they would like the new Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy games to be turn-based and highlighted Expedition 33's success. So I'd say that's definitely interesting and actually a little bit exciting in this case. I talked about it before, but this really could be the game that kind of breaks the will. It could convince some of these companies that, yes, turn-based games are still very desirable when you do them right. Both Square Enix and their investors are now starting to recognize that trend and fan demand. And who knows? Maybe that could convince Square to return to form with the eventual release of Final Fantasy XVII. In the meantime, though, I am a little curious about the rumored Final Fantasy IX remake, specifically on what type of combat it ends up having. Now, PlayStation made the news today after some remarks that they made about PlayStation Plus in an interview with Stephen Totillo. They were asked about the possibility of day one first-party games, which is something that Xbox has majorly pushed for Game Pass. So there has been some external pressure for Sony to add their first-party games day one to make it a more worthwhile service for subscribers. But unlike Xbox, they've kind of gone in a completely different direction, which honestly, I'm not necessarily against. I'll circle back to that here in just a moment because I do have my own critiques, but for now, this is what Sony said. We've sort of stayed true to our strategy across the board, where we're not looking to put games in day and date. Our strategy of finding 4 to 5 independent day and date titles and using that to complement our strategy of bringing games in when they're 12, 18 months or older, that balance for us is working really well across the platform. Now, I don't think that this is shocking to hear. I mean, from a business perspective, and that they are a business, I understand where Sony is coming from. They are in a more favorable position than Xbox. PlayStation is a very well-respected brand, and their consoles sell very well, in part because their first-party games are viewed as premium, prestigious experiences. So they don't necessarily need PlayStation Plus to be the main attraction in the same way that Xbox does. But where I would push back a bit is the value that PlayStation Plus has to offer on a consistent month-to-month basis. PlayStation Plus, in my opinion, I'd say offers a good catalog of games if you don't typically buy your games new. But if you're a more active gamer that stays current with newer games, then yeah, I think there are some things that I think that they could do to offer a more rewarding service for those type of fans. And I'm not talking about day one games. Again, I understand their decision from a business perspective. I get it. I respect it. Their games are very expensive to make. But I'm also speaking through a fan's point of view. And the way that I see it is that PlayStation isn't just skipping day one releases for their own games. I can understand that. But what I'm trying to say is that they also don't do enough when it comes to third-party partnerships either. They mentioned 4 to 5 independent games a year, which I just don't think is enough when you look at the competition. Xbox, in some cases, gets 4 to 5 independent day one games a month. So what I'd like to see from Sony is to at least have one day one launch title every single month, even if it's something smaller. Again, it doesn't have to be their own first-party game. Just get something new and interesting. A subscription really is at its best when it can offer a steady stream of fresh content to keep fans engaged. So you need something to look forward to every single month to make it feel like it's a worthwhile experience. As of right now, though, in my opinion, their service feels very hit or miss. And then even when it comes to their first-party games, PlayStation Plus is still missing games like Horizon 1 and 2, God of War Ragnarok, Spider-Man 1 and 2, and even The Last of Us Part 2, though, honestly, they're kind of doing you a favor there. Just play the first one and be done with it. What's weird, though, is that I believe a few of those games were available in PlayStation Plus at one point, but then were later removed, which I don't agree with that approach, considering their monthly asking price is relatively high. So I'd like to see them do a little bit more with PlayStation Plus, and you would think that fans would want that as well, but at the same time, they still have a lot of defenders that praises this decision. So, I mean, let me know what you all think about this. Do you think they're being smart about this, or do you think that they should do a little bit more? And if so, what would you like to see them do? Now, one more thing before we go. A big story is starting to make the rounds regarding a popular Switch 2 accessory. This is the D-brand kill switch for the Switch 2, and in my opinion, if you play the Switch 2 in handheld mode, a grip is a must-have. The Switch very well might be my most played platform of the past 5 years, but it's also not a very comfortable device. It's just not. And the same goes for the Switch 2. Yeah, it's larger, but it's still flat with really no ergonomics at all. So, yeah, the D-brand kill switch has been a popular grip for a long time. Not my personal preference, but it is popular. The only problem is that the new Switch 2 kill switch has a problem. Apparently, multiple fans reported that it's been causing the Joy-Cons to dislodge if they hold it with one hand, which is, yeah, I'd say extremely alarming, because that means that your brand new Switch 2 that costs $450 to $500 could possibly drop directly onto the floor. That could, at worst, break it, or it could even scratch it. And yeah, there's an entire Reddit thread about this situation. Apparently, a lot of people have had this problem, but what's kind of weird is Dbrand's response. They posted a 4,000 plus word response to basically say that nobody routinely holds the Switch 2 this way. Now, I disagree with that. Yes, you're not going to play a game like this. I agree with that part. But there are times where even I hold my Switch with one hand. So I'll use an example. Hypothetically, let's just say that my son wants me to grab something for him. Well, in that case, I might hold my Switch with one hand for just a moment. And yeah, I'd kind of expect it not to fall apart on me. Now I get what Dbrand is trying to do. They're trying to protect themselves. I get it. But this definitely seems like a design flaw on their part. And, well, the good news is that they have now admitted to that. They said their response was, quote-unquote, spectacularly terrible. So what they're doing is that they're now offering replacements for faulty Switch 2 kill switch cases. Now, in my opinion, though, I really wouldn't chance it. If there's a problem, I'm not going to get another one. So this topic is really more so a warning to avoid it. My recommendation is to go with the Skull & Co. Neo Grip. I had one last generation. I thought it was fantastic. So fantastic, in fact, that I got one again this generation before the Switch 2 even released. It's an amazing grip, and you can even customize it to your liking. Maybe I'll do a review for it at some point, but it easily gets 2 thumbs up from me. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode. But until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.